So we will go ahead and roll out the conversation. And for that, I would like to invite one of our Shepreneur participants for this year. Meher, I would like you to go ahead and take the floor.
Thank you, Supra, for sharing the floor with me. Good morning, Michael. Good evening, everyone.
Morning.
Today, I'm joining this Fireside Chat not only as a participant of Shepreneur program, but also as an employee at Zeno. As an alumna of LedBy Accelerator Program 2025, I was introduced to Zeno through our founder, Dr. Ruha Shadab. I began my journey with Zeno as a battery and powertrain intern, and after completing the 3-month internship in April this year, I transitioned into a full-time role as battery field support engineer. Being a graduate in electrical and electronics engineering, I always dreamed of applying my theoretical concepts to solve the real world challenges, and Zeno bridged that gap. Before joining Zeno, I had a perception that corporate life was mainly about meeting deadlines, achieving targets, and managing responsibilities under pressure. However, my experience over the past 6 months have completely transformed this perspective. At Zeno, I realized that work is not just about completing tasks. It is about continuous learning, collaboration, and growth. The culture encourages us to take ownership, explore new ideas, and learn from every challenge. The support of the team and their willingness to share knowledge has helped me to grow both professionally and personally. My journey at Zeno has taught me that success is not only measured by the results we deliver, but also by the knowledge we gain, the experiences we build, and the growth we achieve along the way. And much of that experience is shaped by the vision and leadership behind the company. It's my absolute honor and privilege to introduce our founder and CEO, Michael Spencer, whose vision has not only changed shaped the company, but also my own professional journey. Michael didn't just see the future of clean energy, he decided to build it. During his time at Tesla, Michael helped scale Model 3 and Model Y, deployed thousands of superchargers, and built Tesla's energy from ground up. But while the world celebrated Tesla's success, Michael was asking a different question. What about the 600 million people who will never own a Tesla? The answer became Zeno. In 2022, he walked away from the prestige and the safety net to build an electric motorcycle not for the Silicon Valley, but for the Boda Boda riders of Nairobi, the delivery drivers of Kampala, and commuters of Bangalore. Today, Zeno has 800 plus bikes on the road, 150 plus charging stations, 25,000 plus customers on the wait list. Zeno has raised $34.5 million from investors like Toyota Ventures and Lower Carbon Capital. Fast Company named them one of the most innovative companies of 2026. But here is what makes Michael truly remarkable. For a Boda Boda rider in Nairobi, a Zeno bike means doubling their take-home income. That is not static. That is a family fed. That is a child in school. That is a life changed. A summa cum laude graduate of Montana State University and an MBA from Yale, Michael has spent over a decade building the businesses across emerging markets, driven by one constant belief that the people who stand to benefit most from the innovation are often the ones considered last. Please join me in welcoming Michael. Michael, we are super excited to have you with us today and look forward to learning from you in the next hour.
Thank you very much, Meher.
Michael, we would love to
Yes.
love for you to take the floor and walk us through the journey of Zeno since its inception to what it is today, as an award-winning innovative company.
Great. Thank you very much. And Meher, thank you so much for that introduction. I was blushing the whole time. I don't think anybody's given me such an illustrious and grandiose introduction. So thank you very much for that. I will do my best to live up to the expectations and standard that you have set with that introduction. And it's an honor and a delight to be introduced by one of our very strong and integral, very, very important parts of our Zeno team here in the LedBy Forum. So thank you for that introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today on your Sunday evening. Appreciate you taking your time out of your evening and out of your weekend to spend here with us. What I am hoping to do today is to spend the first half of our time together walking you through my story and explaining how I've gotten to where I am and how I think about building things. But I really want to focus the majority of our time, if possible, on the questions that you have for me. So I'll try to go relatively quickly through my part of things and then open it up to have discussions around questions you've got and learn more about what people here are building and how we might be able to have some useful insight into thinking through your growth and your opportunities. So I'll start with a quick bit of background on me and where I come from and why I'm motivated by the things I am motivated by. I grew up on a farm and a ranch in a place called Montana. So it's pretty much straight out of a John Wayne Western movie. I grew up on horseback with a pistol on my side, moving cattle on horseback, building things, fixing things. It was an environment that emphasized the importance of self-reliance. And understanding how things worked and how to fix things. So when you had a tractor breakdown or a truck not work or a cow getting sick, it wasn't call customer service or call the customer support line. It was figure out how to fix things yourselves. And so I took that experience, and it was very hardworking in childhood as well. With strong commitment to family and strong expectations from family around your commitment to the family business, which I'm sure a lot of us can relate to here. Expectations of family, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And I took those experiences. I studied architecture. Architecture to me was one part what my father wanted me to study. I got an experience. I effectively was told I'll help cover your tuition and your education as long as you study what I want you to study, not what you want to study. Again, complexities of family pressure. And so I studied architecture, one part out of interest, one part out of familial expectation. But I had quite enjoyed studying architecture because it was an excellent combination of artistic vision creating and practical and pragmatic execution. So how do you build a grand vision for something? How do you create an image of what you want the world to look like? And then how do you go and do the hard work and the organizing and the structuring to get that thing designed in detail and built? And I took that experience and it brought me in my senior thesis work to East Africa to study affordable housing. I think I was fortunate enough to grow up in a very beautiful and very special part of the world, where I established a high expectation of what quality of life and what environmental health looks like. And so I was motivated in my studies and in my research to work on improving things for people who did not have the same kind of blessings that I had from where I was born and raised. And so my senior thesis in architecture school was studying affordable and sustainable housing in East Africa, where I moved to try to understand how to create more affordable and more sustainable to build small housing solutions for people in that part of the world. Out of that experience, I graduated in 2010, and if you're an investor that I'm pitching, I'll tell the story one way. If you're somebody I'm being more open and honest with, I'll tell it a different way. I graduated in 2010, which was a very, very bad time to work in architecture. There was a housing crisis in the U.S., a housing collapse, the mortgage crisis. And so I honestly really couldn't find a job very easily in the US. I did not have an easy time finding a job as an architect or as an intern, architectural intern. And so I took what I had available to me. I'd been in Kenya, and several people had asked me to help them with projects in Kenya. And I shifted back to Kenya as I graduated. Said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I've got some things that'll keep me busy here. And I started a career working on design, kind of ad hoc, project by project design work in Kenya, working for several NGOs and nonprofits. And out of that, built a story around what I was passionate about and what I wanted to work on, which was more efforts around sustainable and affordable, thoughtfully designed spaces. So I was fortunate enough to carve out a living for a couple of years, designing and building health clinics and schools for nonprofits, and a housing. Took a lot of ideas from my research and built a small housing company where we built 40 or 50 homes. And built enough of a foundation for myself that I then could go and explore new things. So I shifted into a healthcare industry. I had kind of a unique opportunity to help start a healthcare business, and shifted to that. Learned a lot there, and then based on my experiences there and the knowledge that I had built, was approached by one of India's largest healthcare companies called Columbia Asia, which is now Manipal. A lot of us might be familiar with Manipal hospitals. And they asked me to launch Columbia Africa, or Manipal Africa. And so I spent several years building a healthcare business across East Africa. And constantly driven by wanting to make sure that I could provide for myself and build a career and a living that would allow me to live comfortably, but always focused and prioritizing working on things that would help people live healthier, more productive, less stressful lives. I still don't fully understand why I do that. It'd be a lot easier if I didn't want to work on things like that. It'd be a lot easier if I wanted to work on sports betting or on a cigarette brand, things that are easy to make money with. But I keep wanting to work on things that make people happier and healthier. And that journey eventually took me to apply to and get accepted at one of the world's leading schools for social impact, which is Yale School of Management, which originally was called the Yale School of Public Service and Management, and then became the Yale School of Business, School of Management. I spent 2 years studying business and social impact. And out of that experience was recruited by somebody that the world knows fairly well now, as he's the richest man in history and the first trillionaire, Elon Musk. So I spent unexpectedly, kind of took a big, scary, it's tough to understand at this point, to appreciate. I took a very scary risk at that stage in my life. I had built a great experience and a great life for myself in East Africa. I had close friends and close community, knew the kind of things that I was working on, and was asked to move to Palo Alto, California, where I'd never lived before, and work for a company that at the time only had about 8 weeks of financing before they were going to go bankrupt. And so I took a big leap on saying, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I think I can learn something by doing it. And so I joined Tesla at a time when it was not the wisest place to work, because you might not get a paycheck after 2.5, 3 months there. And I jumped in and got the experience of in hindsight, getting to build what is one of the largest and most successful, impactful companies in the world today. And so I joined with 3 months of runway before the company would go bankrupt, and I left 4 years later. We were one of the 10 most valuable companies in the world. We had done a lot of things that people said were impossible, that academics and consultants said would never be possible. And I got spent a lot of time seeing and understanding how Elon Musk thinks. And that was very useful. It was not necessarily fun, but it was useful. It was one of those experiences that builds character. When you're doing it, you don't necessarily want to be doing it. And after you've done it, you're glad that you had done it, but you're happy you're not doing it anymore. And I'd say probably one of the biggest things for me that came out of school, my MBA and Tesla, was somewhat kind of realistic pragmatism about how to think about the world. I was an optimistic entrepreneur. Always wanted to go out and change the world and do positive things and start things and grow things and build things. Business school is not great for entrepreneurs because it tells you all the reasons that things won't work. They'll say, "Ah, no, but there's this economic principle and there's this market force and there's all these things that they do an excellent job of teaching you how to explain to yourself why you will fail at something." And so for a lot of entrepreneurs, I say, actually, unless you have a pretty strong confidence about yourself and/or a naivety around what you learn, business school can be quite dangerous. But I got to pair that with 4 years at Tesla. Elon hates MBAs. He despises business schools because they explain to you why things won't work. And so I was fortunate enough to have the experience of business school and then 4 years at Tesla, where we got to go and do things repeatedly that consultants and academics would tell you would be impossible and wouldn't work, and would do them. And then you'd say, well, we just did them. So I guess the academics were wrong. And that combination of things coming out of Tesla was both a skill set in how to do things that are quite hard and a confidence, but an informed confidence. So I think that's the important thing to think through is an informed confidence, a knowledge of how things could go wrong, of why common knowledge would suggest that something's not going to work the way that it's supposed to, and then a confidence and a cunning to say, yes, this might be why this fails. I understand the most likely pitfall here, but I'm going to go do it anyways. And because I have this foresight, this insight into why something might not work, I understand the risks, but I also understand how to navigate them. And that I would say, kind of coming out of Tesla, 2 years at MBA of Yale experience, 4 years getting yelled at by Elon on a weekly basis, and I came out of Tesla in 2022 with a pretty special and 6 year experience that I'm very grateful for having had. And I was really called back to and wanting to work back in the parts of the world where you can have a lot more meaningful impact. So there's a couple of things around what really motivated me. I left Tesla. I already had an idea of what I wanted to do next. I was fortunate in my time at Tesla to have made some unexpectedly good money through my equity, primarily, not through my salary. Everybody at Tesla was very, very low pay, but we had equity, and so we were able to help the company grow, and as part of that process, make some money. And I'll speak quickly about my my kind of motivation and vision for Zeno, and then quickly what we do, and then we'll shift towards opening it up for questions and discussion. So in 2020, as I was still working at Tesla, I took a trip to Kathmandu, Nepal, kind of in the South Asia neighborhood where we all are, to run an ultra marathon. I wanted to go and explore the mountains, and I'd been training for several months. I needed something to keep my head clean and clear while I was very stressed at work at Tesla. And I went to run an ultra marathon in the Himalayas, and I landed in Kathmandu for the first time in Nepal in the dark. And I woke up the next morning to an experience that any of us who spend lots of time in North India know quite well, but at the time was new to me. Is I woke up bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, first time in the Himalayas, and I thought, I'm going to open my hotel window. I'm going to see the Himalayas. I'm going to see Mount Everest in the distance, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be this beautiful place. And I opened the window as I woke up, and I could see about 100 meters, about half block down the street. The smog and the pollution was so bad. I thought, well, there must be fog, or it's raining, or what's happening. And I went outside and very quickly realized that the pollution, the smog was so bad in Kathmandu that you really couldn't see more than a couple hundred meters, which was a pretty rude awakening for me, but also a motivating factor. I tried to go out and go for a training run, and I could make it maybe like a kilometer before I was coughing on the side of the road, unable to run. And I said, okay, well, I've been working in electric mobility. I've been working in this clean energy space. And that's important in a place like San Francisco or in a place like London, but those places have relatively good regulatory policy, and they have conducive climates to where you don't get air pollution like we have here in Kathmandu. And I said the place where we really need to solve things and where EVs can have a major impact is actually in places like Kathmandu, or in Delhi, or in Srinagar, Mumbai. If anybody here, if anybody has been to Bangladesh and to Dhaka, Dhaka is like Kathmandu every day of the year, the worst of Delhi every day of the year. And out of that experience, built a strong conviction and a thesis around electrification of two-wheelers and three-wheelers, electrification of light mobility, taking what Tesla had done for cars and what Tesla had done for residential solar energy and storage, and doing it for light vehicles in the African, Indian, Southeast Asia, Latin American parts of the world. And I'll speak briefly here about the thought process went through this. I spoke about having had this education that helped me understand why any new ideas usually wouldn't work. Kind of the harsh realities of economists say this and market data suggests that. And so I I had to ask myself the question. I had this grand vision around what I wanted to do. I wanted to reduce air pollution. I wanted to help people breathe easier. I wanted to, my aspiration, my desire was a public health aspiration. It was helping people have clean air and breathe clean air and be able to see in the cities that they live in. And it was environmental and wanting to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I had this aspiration of something I wanted to change about the world. But I had the harsh pragmatism of saying, well, how do I actually make that work? Does it pencil? Is there something commercially viable about it? Because trying to go and change all the two-wheelers and the three-wheelers in the world, like that takes lots of money, that takes lots of time. You can't do it by edict. You can't say you have to all do this. You have to offer the consumer something better than what they currently have that makes them want to switch. They might not be most motivated by clean air and reduced emissions like I'm motivated by. So can I offer the consumer something that is better for them on a daily basis that achieves what I call a positive externality? Economists often refer to negative externalities. So a negative externality of an affordable scooter to own, a TVS Jupiter or a Honda Activa, the positive impact of that is you have a mobility and the way to move around affordably. The negative externality, kind of the symptom of it, is that you are polluting the air around you. So I said, I have this positive externality I want to work on, a positive kind of side effect, but how do you make it make sense for the consumer in the first place? And so I went out and I spoke to, from that experience, I went out and I got several friends roped into this, spoke with passion and spoke with enthusiasm. I said, I don't know how any of this works, but I want to go and explore this. And together we went out and we spoke to around 2,000 or 3,000 two-wheeler owners in Kathmandu, in Delhi, in Jaipur, Mumbai, Bangalore, Nairobi, Mumbai, Lagos, Mexico City, Bogota, Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro. I would speak to them, or I would have friends who were living in those parts of the world speak to them. And I developed a good understanding of what customers were looking for in two-wheelers and in three-wheelers. And simultaneously, I did a bunch of research and I tried to understand what the cost of energy is, and what it would cost to move somebody on a two-wheeler. And the primary thing I was looking for is I have these positive externalities that I want to accomplish, but what can I offer the consumer? And the primary thing that I wanted to offer the consumer, what economists always say, assuming that humans are rational beings, which sometimes we are, sometimes we aren't, can we save people money by shifting them from a petrol vehicle to an electric vehicle? Can we put more money in their pockets? Can we make this a financial decision, a financial preference for them? And the second thing, so that was like the core of this, is can we save people money? The second was, can we give them a better experience? Can we, and this was learning from Tesla. Tesla did two things. They saved people money, but the primary motivator for people buying Teslas wasn't financial savings. It was, this is a cooler, better product than my Toyota or my Suzuki or my Mahindra, whatever, or my Tata. This is a more fun to drive vehicle. And so I wanted to go out and figure out if we could rationally help people save money and emotionally give them a better experience than what they're used to. And I researched a lot of different markets and a lot of different products, and I established a pretty strong, this is kind of thesis forming, when you say, I have a belief, these are the data points and the information that supports that belief. So it's rationally founded, it's rationally defended. And now I'm going to go out and explore it. And the thesis was, if you can lower the cost of buying and owning an EV, make it a better vehicle to drive and own and operate than a petrol equivalent, that you can shift people from one to the other, and in doing so, establish these positive externalities. Then I said, okay, I have a strong thesis. I have an understanding of what I think needs to happen, what needs to be true. Then I said, is it anybody else? This is where you now get into the pragmatic parts of like, I have a vision, I have an idea, I want to go change the world. I have a rational, data-driven, foundational kind of thesis for how I can make this happen. Then I said, well, have other people tried similar things, and what works and what doesn't work? And so I went out and did a competitive analysis. I went and looked at that time, this was 2020, companies like Sun Mobility were just getting started, companies like Battery Smart in Northern India, company like Gogoro in Southeast Asia had been around for 2 or 3 years doing electric two-wheelers. And so I said, what's working for them and what's not working for them? I wanted to understand how to get cheap and free or close to free insight into what other people had tried and what was or wasn't working. And if I could do that, it allows me to climb on their shoulders, so to speak. I could look at, and so I went and I looked at Gogoro in Taiwan. Gogoro at that point had spent $150 million. Some things were working for them, some things weren't. They were one of the best-selling two-wheelers in Taipei. They had 500,000, at that point, maybe 150,000, 200,000 electric scooters on the streets of Taipei, but a lot of things weren't working. I went out, I found somebody who had just left Gogoro, who was a senior employee who had been there. I stalked him on LinkedIn. I messaged him. I said, hey, if you ever have 15 minutes and would like to talk, I'd love to ask you some questions. I got connected with that person. I said, what did you do at Gogoro that worked well? What would you do differently if you did it again? And in asking those questions, I got $150 million of free advice. He had been part of spending $150 million of working for 3 to 4 years. And I got to go and get all of that advice. It's like, oh, I'm not trying to do anything in Taipei. I'd never try to compete with Gogoro, but I love what you're doing. And I think maybe there's an opportunity to do similar things elsewhere. What did you learn in spending $150 million and getting to 200,000 customers on the road? And what would you do differently if you could do it again? And 15-minute call turned into 5 or 6 hour-long calls. And I got $150 million of free advice, $150 million that I didn't have to spend to learn the same lessons. And so I was taking that MBA experience of saying, people like an economist might say, well, this will never work. And I was like, okay, you have reason for saying it won't work. There's logic behind that, but I'm going to go and say, if it was to work, it would work because I navigated this challenge and I bobbed and weaved around that shortcoming. And I know what the pitfalls are. With all of that information, I built a strong conviction of, this is what we can do. This is how it works for the consumer. This is how we do it differently than other companies have tried to do it, to avoid the pitfalls that they have found and the challenges that they face. And that was one part, how we would develop the product, what an electric two-wheeler would look like, and where we would start, what markets we would start in. We wanted to make things, it was going to be a hard thing to do. We wanted to make things as easy for ourselves as possible. And so I went and I developed an understanding. I'll quickly flash up our product here in a minute, and then we'll shift to questions. I quickly developed an understanding of what we would do differently about our product, how we would lower costs, how we would make it better for the customer, how it would be commercially more viable. And then the second thing I did is I said, how can we go and make a lot more money? So one of the key things that I had to ask myself is, how much does a two-wheeler owner and a two-wheeler driver in Taipei spend on a fuel scooter? How much do they spend monthly on fuel? And how much do they then spend if they shifted to a Gogoro scooter? And it was around 1,500 rupees, 1,500 to 2,000 rupees a month is what they would be spending on fuel with a petrol scooter. And they would then spend around 1,800 to 2,200 rupees a month shifting to a Gogoro. So they were spending slightly more. And there were government incentives. It's like, why would people be spending more? It's like, well, Gogoro scooters were cool. They had solved on the cool vehicle, nicer, more enjoyable to use. And there were incentives and government systems that were encouraging it. I said, that still sounds risky. Trying to convince consumers to spend 10 or 15% more for just a slightly better experience, it sounds like a hard hill to climb. So I looked at other markets and I said, where do people spend a lot more money on fuel than in Taipei? And where can we go and serve them? And the answers to that were globally, East Africa is unique in that it has a couple of things going for it. It has really no established public transportation system. And so the way that we experience autos in India, where your three-wheeler autos, your Bajajs and TVS autos on the corners are everywhere, motorbikes are that way in East Africa. Motorbikes everywhere on the street corners. 95% of all motorbikes in East Africa are taxis. They're not personal use. They're not commuting. They're just moving people around, just like Rapidos. It's like if every motorbike on the road is a Rapido driver. Fuel is imported, so it's very expensive. And we did the math and we spoke to East African motorbike taxi owners. And instead of spending 1,500 or 2,000 rupees a month, they were spending between 15,000 and 20,000 rupees a month. They were spending 2.5 to 3 lakh a year on fuel. And we did the math with the homework we had done. We're like, if we could shift a petrol motorbike owner in Nairobi from petrol to electric, we can save them over 1 lakh a year. We can save them 15 to 20,000 rupees a month on busy months, and give them a better experience. So we know what we do differently. We know what other companies have tried and what hasn't worked. We're going to go and pick a really, really easy place to do this. Easy in that we've got more money we can charge. If we know that we can save somebody that much money, we can charge them a lot more. And so we realized that in East Africa, if we started in East Africa, we could charge somebody where Gogoro was charging somebody 2,000 rupees a month. We could make 8 to 10,000 rupees a month from a customer while still saving them a huge amount of money. So we set ourselves up to make a hard thing as easy as possible. And I'll pull up slides now, give you a quick walkthrough. Out of all of those learnings and lessons, I'll quickly introduce what we do today. Meher did a very good job of starting and introducing us better than I can do probably, so I won't go on and on. Zeno is an electric mobility company, but we're also an energy business. We're building what we call a full ecosystem of energy generation, energy storage, and energy availability for productive use. And so if you think about us like a utility, like a power utility, like Bescom in Bangalore, and an electric mobility company, we think about how can we generate energy through renewable assets? How can we store that energy so that we can deliver it to customers where they want it and where they need it at the right time? And so there's a lot encompassed in that description, and I'll walk you through the different parts of it and then show you tangibly what our products are today. And then we'll open it up for questions. At the core of what we do is we make, and this is what Meher works on. This core product is the Zeno battery. Our team calls it the ZEST, the Zeno Energy Storage System. It's a 2 kilowatt hour battery. 2 kilowatt hours is roughly what an average home in India uses in 24 hours. It's kind of that amount of energy, 2 to 3 kilowatt hours of energy. That battery has an IoT module in it, like a cell antenna, cell phone antenna in it. So we can see where it is. We can see how much energy is in it, how people are using it. We can see the health of the battery. It's an IoT connected device. You can charge that battery. You can plug it into the wall at home and charge it up there. You can go to a public kiosk where you can swap it. A Zeno installed and managed public kiosk where you can drop off a battery and pick a battery. Or if it's in one of our vehicles, you can pull in and plug in at one of our fast chargers where you can plug in your vehicle and charge in around 45 minutes.
Can
That
I
same
come in
battery.
1 second?
Yep, absolutely.
Because, guys, I just coincidentally am passing by one of those Zeno swap stations that Michael was just talking about. It's right behind me as I pick up my food. So
yes, you are.
Yeah, so this is like these squares are where the batteries are when people will come with their bikes and swap them out. Pretty nifty. Okay, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Shadab. So you can swap those batteries, you can fast charge, and then you can use those batteries in 3 pretty different and very cool ways. The first is in motorbikes and autos and tuk-tuks, scooters. You slot those batteries in, and they can run those vehicles. You can then do something that takes a bit of time to wrap your head around, but the swap station that Dr. Shadab just showed us has 8 batteries in it. So it is holding 16 kilowatt hours of energy. That is like a relatively large backup generator sitting on a curb in a city, and it's connected to the grid, and it's got solar on it. We can take the energy that's stored there, and if there's a 30 or 40-minute time frame when we know there aren't any customers that want to come and get batteries for their motorbikes or for their autos, we can sell that stored energy back to the grid at moments when they need it the most. So it's like it's commodity trading in a way, where you might, if you know rice, or if you know that some commodity, well, we'll say rice, is very affordable to buy right now, but you know that next month it's going to be very expensive and it's going to be hard to find rice. We can store up energy from the grid or from solar. We can save a bit of it, and at the right time, say 9 o'clock at night, when everybody's turning their lights on and watching TV and refrigerators going and cook stoves going, and the utility says we really are short on power, we can say, well, we'll sell you back some energy at a very, very high price, but helping you stabilize your demand. The last thing that we can do is that people can take these batteries at home. They can take them out of their vehicles, or after we've stopped using them in a mobility application, when they're kind of through their first career, their first 6 to 7 year career in mobility, they can be installed in someone's home with some solar, and you have a backup home battery that allows you, if the grid goes down, which all of us experience on a regular basis, if the grid isn't working for a few hours, or if you live somewhere without grid access, you have a home battery that can run your home for 2 to 3 days. This is the grand vision and the big ecosystem. This is what I left Tesla to build: is solve for mobility, but solve for all forms of energy generation. Allow people to cook without charcoal, cook without gas, cook at home with electricity. Allow us to generate more solar power, use less coal-fired power plants. Let's figure out a way to reduce emissions, to improve people's public health, and to save them money. This was my grand vision. It was not how I pitched what we were doing to investors. I had to get tactical and tangible on the specifics, because this is all like big and grandiose. And they said, this is too hard and too complex. So what we focused on is this mobility part. We said, we're going to solve for one very particular mobility use case first: motorbike taxis in East Africa, followed by motorbike taxis and delivery drivers in India. Swiggy, Zomato, Blinkit, Rapido, Uber, Moto drivers, high mileage people today who own a Hero Splendor or a Honda Shine. Those are who we're going to solve for first. And then after we've done that and we've built a business that makes money, then we're going to go and do things like virtual power plants and trade with the grid. And then we're going to go and do things like home energy storage. But we had to say very, very tactically, this is the thing we're going to do. This is when we're going to do it. This is the money it will make. And this is the foundation it will build. And with that story, then we went out and built this stack of product right here. I'll walk you through it, and then we'll wrap up and open up for questions. This is all product that we have on the road today. We're now, because we've been growing so quickly in the last few weeks, we're now almost 1,500 customers. 1,500 will be 2,000 customers in the next 5 to 6 weeks. We have just under 200 charge points. So this is our Zeno, what we call the Imara electric motorcycle. It's designed to compete with like a Hero Splendor or a Honda Shine, a Bajaj, a Pulsar, or a TVS Apache. Drives like a 150cc, can carry up to 250 kg of load. It has a very strong motor in it that allows you to go up and down steep hills. So it's what we call a sport utility electric motorcycle. It's designed to be fun to drive and to look cool, but also to meet all the needs of utility life. Carrying a family of 3 or 4 or 5 to visit auntie and uncle in the village, while also being able to do delivery work all day, carrying passengers. We sell it today for around 5%, 7% less than petrol motorbike equivalents. And we do that because we don't sell the batteries. The batteries stay as a Zeno-owned asset, and we let customers rent them. So they pay a daily pay-as-you-go or a subscription basis. Think about it as like Reliance Jio or an Airtel subscription or pay-as-you-go prepaid plan. And when they're accessing those batteries, they can swap them at our swap stations, like the one Dr. Shadab just showed. They can plug in and fast charge, or they can buy a home charger and charge them at home. And the key things that we're validating today and demonstrating is that there's demand for the product, that customers want it. We went out and when we started developing this vehicle, we did 20 or 30 different iterations. We developed product with a little bit of money we raised. We went out, we gave it to customers, we let them drive it, we let it break. We understood what caused it to break. We went and built another one. Really painful, annoying, slow work. You work 2-3 months to build something. You go and you give it to somebody for 2 to 3 months. You're waiting, twiddling your thumbs, saying, okay, let's see what breaks, see what doesn't work about it, see what the customer doesn't like. Go and do another 2 or 3 months, build another one, build a dozen, give it to a dozen people, back and forth. So we did a year and a half of that. That's the product market fit part of things. We got feedback on this is what I like, this is what I don't like, this is how I need it to work better, this is where things would break. And out of that, we then developed a solution where we met the consumer's needs, where we solved a lot of the business challenges that hadn't worked for other companies. And today we're validating that we can sell a motorbike for 5 to 7% less than a petrol bike. You can buy it and you can own and operate it for 50% less than a petrol motorbike. So it's more affordable to buy and it increases your income every day that you drive it. It meets all of your needs. It can carry the same amount or larger load. It can go faster. It can go up and down steeper hills. It can give you the range that you need to get through your day. And it solves for charging. And we now today, with these customers and with this charging network, are generating revenue, showing that customers want our product, have a strong wait list of demand, and are reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing air pollution. Today, in several markets in Kenya, we're at a stage where we've already put out of business at least one petrol station because we've taken so much business away from them in our battery swap stations that they no longer have enough business to continue operating. And that means there's less fuel being consumed, less particulate matter, and less emissions being emitted, and customers saving money and happier as a result. I will wrap up there. I know I'm a few minutes over on my part of things, and we'll open it up for questions on different parts of this journey. But I would like to, as we open up questions, happy to answer anything, but would like to try to make sure we create questions that are useful for everybody in the group. So asking me things that we think everybody else can learn from in terms of how we've approached a problem or how we scale a team to do things like this, so that everybody here can learn from the experience as they all think about the endeavors and the ventures that we're all working on independently.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was such a boost of motivation. I think it's a good thing that you didn't see the Himalayas that day outside of your window.
Yes, it is, practically.
So, and most definitely, I think it's people like you who want to make the world a better place for everyone, help make us that reality. So I think it's also a good thing that you think about these things, even though these are the hard things to think about. I think this has been nothing short of a masterclass of the entire genesis of how to build a product, validating it, the product market fit, and eventually you've also raised a very good amount of money and Zeno has had a phenomenal journey in the last 4 years. I would take up the participants Q&A, but I would just want to ask you one question before we go ahead. Zeno has raised close to 35 million in funding since its inception. What do you think is one thing that like founders should cross-check or they should have ready before they even think of, approaching investors?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We could do a whole hour on just that topic. But I think the important thing is you need to understand investors' mindset. Investing is a negotiation, just like anything else. Everybody, you need to, I'd say it sounds kind of weird, but empathy is probably the most useful tool in understanding how to raise money, because you need to understand what they need to get out of a interaction. So there's all sorts of different kinds of investors in the world. There are investors who, well, there's all sorts of different endeavors and businesses in the world. Some that are very, very high risk and some that are relatively low risk. And so investing is really an exercise in picking the right investor for the right segmentation of risk that you're taking, and matching the risk with the investor. So when you go to the bank and take out a loan, that banker is an investor. If you take out a loan from the bank to buy a motorbike or to buy a car, to buy a scooter, it is relatively low risk. If you can't make that loan payment, that EMI payment for the Suzuki Maruti that you're buying, you can, with disappointment and sadness, say, I can't make the payments, and the bank will say, that's fine. We will take this asset and we'll sell it to somebody else, and we're free and clear. We haven't lost any money. We've maybe made a little bit of money. So that's low risk investing with low cost of capital. Your EMI payment might be 10 or 12%. So you go to the bank and the bank will invest for things like that. We are on the opposite end of the spectrum. What we're doing is completely absurd. Makes no sense at all for years. We have to go and we have to develop and we had to do 2 years of testing product and having customers give us feedback. We made no money during that time. We had to raise enough money to build a team of 40 or 50 people and pay them for several years without a single dollar, without a single rupee of revenue. And so we had to go to high risk investors. And in high risk investors, there's one of two different types. There's the ones who say, we're going to give you lots of money and we're going to be patient and wait to get any money back because the potential amount of money that we can make in the future is so large that it is worth it. It's like the odds are very low, but the outcome is very high. Or you find impact investors who say, what you're trying to do is very, very hard and unlikely to be successful, but the importance of its effort is important for human well-being. And so knowing what kind of money we had to go after, knowing what we needed, what resources that we needed, I had to build, and I learned a lot about this over the several different kind of stages of fundraising. We've gone through effectively 3 primary stages of fundraising. I'd done my homework. I knew that if we wanted to go and do this, that if we wanted to develop a new type of vehicle, if we wanted to go out and build infrastructure that mimics and competes with petrol stations, which are ubiquitous, that it was going to take a lot of money. So I went out, I built a model that shows how we would burn lots of money at one period, would start to break even at a second stage of things, and then we could start to make a lot of money. We could make what Shell, Total, what petrol station businesses could make. And I went to investors who have appetite for very, very high risk, as long as they see a pathway to substantial return. So our first investor was somebody, I passed on small investors who said, yeah, we'll give you $100,000. We'll give you 2 crore or 3 crore and see how you go. It's like, look, what I need to do takes a lot more than 2 or 3 crore. I can't take your 3 crore and promise you 10 crore back a year later like that. I need to take 100 crore and if I'm taking 100 crore, I need to be able to demonstrate a pathway and tell a story to where the person giving me 100 crore can get 10 or 12,000 crore back in 4 or 5 years. And so I paired what we were doing with the right investors. We have the potential. I had to build a story and show financially that if we are successful, a decade from now, we can be making a comparable amount of money as a Reliance Jio or a Tata or a Bajaj or a Toyota. And there is a pathway to us doing that. We can go out, and when you can make that much money, that establishes a company's valuation as being substantial, being quite large. If we look at Reliance Jio, if we look at Tata, they're worth tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of crores. And so there was a unlikely, like low odds, low probability that we could become similar in size to a Reliance or a Tata. And there are investors who say, yeah, the odds are low, but I'm going to give you 10 or 20 or 30 crore right now. And I'm going to wait patiently because if you do turn into a Tata scale business, my 100 crore will turn into 100,000 crore. And so I had to go and this is part of the, I think, learning, being exposed to Elon. I came from a farm and a ranch. I came from like a relatively like humble, don't get bigger than your britches is a Western American saying. Like stay humble, don't borrow more money than you need if you can't use it carefully. And I had to go out and our first investor was the first investor into Uber. He was the first investor into Twitter. He was the first investor into a company called Stripe, which transacts most of the mobile money payments globally. He's one of the most successful investors in recorded history, a guy named Chris Sacca. He was one of the original, if anybody has ever watched Shark Tank, he was one of the original people, judges on Shark, one of the sharks on Shark Tank. And I had to tell Chris Sacca how I was going to build a business in the next decade that would be bigger than Tesla, which like sounded completely absurd. Like who do I think I am to be going and telling somebody that I'm going to build a business bigger than Tesla? But I had to build a logical story and a thesis, and then I had to go in and confidently, without twitching and without shrinking and without losing eye contact, tell somebody that if we do this and then we do this and then we do this and you give me money here and you give me more money here, that we can build a business that is worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. And if they believe that, they would give me 10 crore an hour, 100 crore an hour because they could see a pathway to that being 100,000 crore. That is the fast and dirty on how to think about fundraising, is understand what your investor is looking for, understand what you need to make true for them to get what they need. Pick the right investors. If you don't want to go out and try to tell a story, or if what you're trying to solve in the world is not this high risk, high reward, put in 10,000 crore, but get out 1,000,000 crore. Understand which investors you're going after. And ours is a very, very big swing. So many businesses don't have to be such a massive, big swing. There's plenty of businesses where I'll take 1 crore carefully over 3 years, and we have a business that doesn't require 2, 3, 4 years of employing people and doing research and doing the science work. And so it's about sizing the money that you need and the investors that you go after and understanding what they're looking for. And if you can do that, and you're aligned, and then you can show whatever that investor is, you have to show how you're going to make money. You have to say how you're going to make money or how you're going to have a particular impact. Because if the investor is looking for a particular impact, then they're optimizing for that impact outcome rather than financial outcome. And you do that through comparables. You do that through, if this and this happen, we can make this much money. And then ideally, the least risky is when you're already making money. You can say, look, this was our idea, this was our thesis, this is how we want to change the world. We went out and we did it in a very scrappy, cheap way, and we're already making money. This is the money we're making. And you give us more money, and that will increase the money that we can make. Or we will make these investments, it will reduce our costs, it will increase our margins and then make you more money. So I'll stop there because that's a topic that can keep going for a long time.
Thank you so much, Michael. I think you did sum it up very beautifully, that you have to find the kind of people that I would say have the same mindset as you.
And understand
Nazia,
what they're looking for.
yes, thank you so much. Yes, I would remind all of our participants that whoever needs to ask a question, please go ahead and raise your hand, and we already have two. So Nazia, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to ask such a person my question. And it was such a great navigation through all your slides, and it was just a masterclass for us. So my question to you, before going to that, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Nazia. I'm building a women wellness brand where we've reversed lifestyle disorders through diet, yoga, and mental wellness. And
Okay.
to my question for you is what did affordability cost you personally? Like slower growth, harder fundraising, or anything from your experience which we can learn?
Good question. The problem that I wanted to solve required affordability because the problem was created by mass participants. So many people driving two-wheelers and driving three-wheelers and producing pollution. So I knew that if I solved for a small group of people, like luxury vehicle owners, I'd been doing that at Tesla, that it wouldn't solve for the many, it would solve for the few, and then you wouldn't have the impact. And so, not regretfully, but like I had to take the hard decision to say, yeah, we have to figure out how to solve for affordability. I don't like. There's other companies. If we look at our space, there's companies like Ultraviolet, who's doing a premium electric motorcycle in Bangalore. They're like a 5-6 lakh motorbike. They say we're going to go and do the Tesla thing. They sell very, very few motorbikes. We sell more motorbikes in a week than they sell in a quarter, because they're selling to a small group of people, but their margins are much better. We don't make money on our motorbikes right now. Right now, we take a loss on every bike we sell, and as we scale our volumes and our production, we bring our costs down. It's because we sell our bike for 1 lakh. They sell theirs for 5. And so it's really about sizing where you want to be and what you want to do. If you're in the space that you're in, then I think it's a much more interesting space to say, what does it look like to start with a more premium product that a smaller group of people can afford and price accordingly, and then adjust down. So I think one of the great things that Tesla did, and this is Tesla's more important brand perception and lifestyle perception for Tesla was more important than for us. For us, absolute affordability is more important to get our customers. But in lifestyle, starting with a premium product establishes aspirational, establishes cool factor, establishes FOMO, and then you can bring that affordability into the mix as you go. And so this is something to think about. This isn't advice if this is what you should do, because I don't know this full context of what you're doing. But I think one of the interesting things about lifestyle is when you can create aspirational, like so and so is using this, and it's a premium experience. And then you can say, oh, but actually now you can. So what Tesla did is we said Model S and the Model X. Each of those cars cost a minimum of a crore. And we sold a small number of those to high profile, cool people. And then we said, now we're going to introduce the Model 3, which is a 30 lakh car or 25 lakh car. And now everybody said, well, I can't buy the 1 crore car, but the same company makes the 1 crore car, sells a 25 lakh car. And it has similar interior and similar acceleration. So I'm going to go and buy that. And so I think in your space, the hard part of this is that you need to be in an Excel spreadsheet and say, for what we offer, what are the costs that we incur? And where is our delta on how much, where is our spread on how much we can make? And if the starting point is that you have relatively high costs, and you bring those down over time with scale, then you might want to start with a premium experience and sell to a small group of people and then bring that down over time. But you also, like, if you're sitting in the space where if you're digital, so if you're talking about yoga and wellness and app interaction, then you can start with affordability, because as soon as you've built content, you can step and repeat that. So you've made the content once, and now you can sell that content 1,000 times over with low incremental cost. If you're talking about beauty or wellness, where you're making product, where you're making makeup or health product, that's somewhere where your costs are going to come down over time as you scale. And so early on, you either have to say, we're going to focus on affordability and sell at a loss, or start premium where we can price at a positive margin. And as costs come down, introduce more affordable products. That's my thinking there. Happy to do a follow-up on it if there's a particular part that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Michael. I think what you've just shared, the insight would also be helpful to a lot of other founders here in the group. Yes, Shamala, you can go ahead with your question.
Thank you so much, Saka. Hello, Michael. It's a pleasure to meet you here today. My name is Shamaila, and I run a handcrafted embroidery, lifestyle, and fashion brand. And we're deeply committed to working toward sustainable, 100% sustainable business. And I would like to ask you, like, many investors and customers say that they want sustainability, and but they often choose convenience or low pricing. So how have you balanced mission and commercial growth, and what lessons could apply to a small fashion brand like a micro business?
Yep, great question and great space to be working in. I think anytime that you're I think one of the hard things about impact, starting a business with a desire to change something about the world in a positive way, is that your incumbents, the people who are already offering the service that you want to improve upon, have scale and have incumbency in a way that there's a harsh dilemma that you have to face wanting to make the impact that you want to make. You can be a founder who is just purely obsessed with making money, who has found a way to do what an incumbent does at a lower cost. that is a great spot to be. If you say it costs somebody else X amount to make a Shervani or to make a any piece of clothing, it costs them this much to make it, and I've figured out a way to make it for half of that. You're in a strong competitive position, and your innovation, your intellectual property is figuring out how to do something cheaper and faster than it takes them to do it. If you're saying, I want to do something that they do, and this is the hard part of impact and sustainability, is I want to do what they do without the negative externalities that they have. To do that, I have higher costs, then you're automatically setting yourself up to be in a losing position against the incumbent. So this is where you have to then say, okay, I know that the deck is stacked against me, the odds are stacked against me. I'm trying to do something that they don't do because it is more expensive. This is like maybe a slightly esoteric metaphor or understanding, but it's an important thing to like noodle or think on. People often ask like why you go to like an organic grocery store. It's like why is the organic produce and the organic food so much more expensive than the ones that require fertilizers and pesticides? Because it's like fertilizers and pesticides cost lots of money, and if you just don't have those things, aren't your costs lower? And then why does the organic have to be so much more expensive? The reason that mass-produced food, and this applies to fashion in some ways as well, that mass-produced food, which has the high pesticides and fertilizer input costs, are so much more cheaper is because the pesticides and the fertilizers produce dramatically higher yields. And so for the same input costs or slightly higher input costs, you get a lot more food. And organic food, you don't have the pesticides, you don't have the fertilizers that boost productivity. And so you have similar inputs, but you have to, but less output. And so you have to sell each bit of produce for that much more to cover your costs. And it's like a really like tragic and like at first pass when you realize that depressing realization. Fashion is a similar thing. Is like you want to work towards something better and more sustainable, and you're working against competitors who like in fashion, like a very simple input is like if you want to be fair trade and you don't want low paid child labor doing embroidery and you want to pay people more, like you're saying I want to do something because it's the right thing to do, but it's going to cost more. So then the only lever that you have is you have to be able to sell your product for much more than they can sell theirs. That's what you have to figure out how to do. And the great thing is that in lifestyle, I'm not particularly good at this. I'm sure a lot of people on this call are much better at how to convince people to do like lifestyle decision making. Is that if you can tell a story around what you're doing, and this is what Tesla did a very, very good job of at the beginning. The people that ran marketing at Tesla, two things. Tesla didn't officially have a PR or a marketing team, but they hired people to work in the sales team from Louis Vuitton and Gucci and Chanel. So people who knew nothing about cars were hired not to market, but to sit in the sales org and build storytelling around the product. And they were people from luxury, clothing, and handbag brands because they understood how to make something aspirational and desirable, even though it was dramatically more expensive. Because that was when we were selling the Model S and the Model X, 1 crore vehicles. We needed to sell those people it was dramatically less convenient. If you had a Porsche or a BMW or a Mercedes and you were going to buy a Tesla for the same price, at that time we had like 4 superchargers in California, and that was it in the entire world. So you had to convince somebody a gross inconvenience for a similarly priced car. And they did that by saying, oh, well, Larry Page and Sergey Brin bought the first ones. Two founders of the most wealthy, biggest companies in the world. They're driving them. And if they're driving it, it's cool. And so in this space, the storytelling around hand embroidered, unique and special fashion wear is a story that can resonate with a lot of people and cause them to make a buying decision out of emotional preference. The important thing is that you need to make sure you focus on customers with disposable income. Customers without disposable income never have the ability to say, I'm choosing the more expensive one over the cheaper one because I like the story better. And so you need to say, I'm going to start with consumers that have disposable income. The more disposable income, the better. I'm going to tell a story that resonates with them. I'm going to let them feel involved in and engaged with what we're doing and say, look, like of the 2 different options that I can have for buying something this month, I'm going to take this one because I like the story better. And also empathy and understanding why people do things, people of a particular disposable income bracket want to be able to tell other people a story about what they're wearing. And so if you can give them a story that they can tell, you can call it sharing a story. You can also call it bragging and being terribly annoying at a dinner party. But if you can give them a story to tell that they like, they will choose the premium product. And the interesting thing is, I think what a lot of people here, I'm assuming from the two stories I've heard, you're working in a space that economists dub luxury goods. And luxury goods sounds it's just like fancy things. But luxury goods is an economic definition, an economic term for particular products and services, which means that the more you sell them for, the greater the demand becomes. So we assume like the cheaper product, the more demand there is for something, and that's true for rice, it's true for fuel. But for luxury goods, the more you sell something for, the more demand there is. Premium clothing brands, outdoor brands in the US and Europe, companies like North Face and Patagonia, Arc'teryx, if they lower their prices, they sell less of a product. If they increase their prices, they sell more of it. It sounds counterintuitive. It's hard to get in the spot where people do that, but if you can build a strong story and then build aspirational exclusivity, you have this ability to charge more than the incumbent competitors for something that is a fundamentally different product because it's a different story, it's a different input, and people resonate with it.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Also, thank you for particularly connecting those threads and helping our participants see that how storytelling also can help them.
Yeah.
Anna, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sufra. And thank you so much, Michael. Such a pleasure and such a wonderful story. Rather, thank you for giving us the real story and not the highlight reel. So I'm Romana, and I'm working towards building an EdTech product. And my question is, at what point did the size of what you were building and the financial scale it would reach stop feeling overwhelming or even uncomfortable? And what changed in you, not in the business, that made that shift happen?
Good question. And again, one we could easily spend an hour discussing because I'd love to get your perspective on the same. It is still terribly overwhelming. So I'm still deep in the overwhelming. Like we've raised 30, 31, $32 million. For us to achieve what we want to achieve, I have to go and raise another $1 billion or so, 800 million to $1 billion. That's overwhelming. That's terrifying. That I used to have hair. I don't have any hair anymore. It's really scary. I have no idea if or how I'm going to find $1 billion. I know that if I can find $1 billion, I can build a business that will make $3 or $4 billion a year. And so it pencils, like the math works. Like if we raise $1 billion and invest $1 billion, it will be because we have a business that is generating $3 or $4 billion a year. And that $1 billion is then well worth the investment. When did this? So it is always overwhelming. I'm gonna butcher the quote, but there's a quote about bravery is not being afraid or not having fear. It's the ability to be afraid and carry on anyways, which has resonated with me for a long time. My time at Tesla, going into my time at Tesla, even after my fancy Ivy League MBA, I had this like mindset of like, this is a quick vignette on my first few weeks at Tesla. Business school was like, you have to have everything done right and you have to have the Excel spreadsheets and you do have to have all of that. You have to know what you're doing. You have to have a plan. You have to understand the pitfalls and the booby traps and how things can go wrong. But my first week at Tesla, I thought I was going and joining one of the most innovative companies in the world. I thought it was an innovative company that was about to go bankrupt, but I thought it was still like where the most impressive, interesting things were happening. And everybody in the world did at the time. It was the most sought after place to work on the planet by engineers, because they thought it was where you would do really cool things. NASA wasn't cool anymore. Tesla was cool. My first week and a half at Tesla, I was in a warehouse trying to fix a problem for Elon, and it was absolute, complete, and utter chaos. It wasn't an innovative warehouse. We weren't more organized than Amazon or Swiggy we didn't have robots moving things. We didn't know everything. We had no idea where anything was. My first job as a senior leader at Tesla was to go and find blue Model 3 bumpers in a 50,000 square meter warehouse because nobody knew where they were. I was climbing over boxes like a monkey looking for, like ripping on cardboard boxes looking for blue bumpers. Like, nope, those are red bumpers and those are tires and that, I don't know what that part is. There was nothing innovative and slick and smooth about it. What I got out of my experience at Tesla was as realizing as long as you had a foundational story and a pathway, the math that says if we do this, this, and this, we can get to this, and it's founded in reality, optimistic reality, but founded in reason. And then we do this and we do this. That if the end objective is big enough and justifies the work, even if it's terrifying, that you still go for it. And so I'll compare. There's lots of companies. This is a pretty good comparison from my world, and I'll try to modulate it for many other people. Harley Davidson is a famous American motorcycle brand, and quite kind of ironically and fate-wise, the CEO of Harley Davidson is a neighbor of mine. And he said, I'm going to go out, I'm going to build an electric motorcycle brand. And Harley Davidson's going to launch an electric motorcycle. Now, there's not that many motorcycles sold in the US every year. It's like 500,000 motorcycles in the US total. That's like 1 month of sales in India, but they're more expensive. And Harley Davidson sells like 100,000 a year. And so the CEO of Harley Davidson said, we're going to go out and we're Harley Davidson. We know what we're doing. We're going to make an electric motorcycle. Everybody's going to buy it. He went and spent $3 billion developing a Harley Davidson electric motorcycle. Harley doesn't sell $3 billion of petrol motorcycles a year in the US. He spent a huge amount of money for a product that Harley Davidson motorcycle owners don't want electric motorcycles. They want something that's loud and emits a lot of exhaust. So he spent $3 billion making an electric motorcycle. That was just to develop it. That was just to do all that. And they sell 4 or 5 of them a month. We sell that in an hour. Okay, so they spent a huge amount of money on something that didn't then have an outcome that, like, in order to spend $3 billion to make an electric motorcycle, you need to know that you can sell 10 or 12 billion of them a year. So he picked the wrong thing and spent a huge amount of money on something that would never actually work. So the key thing is, like, I know if I spend $1 billion that I can go and build a business that makes 4 or 5 billion a year. You need to, and I had to convince myself of that. In some ways, I had to delude myself into that, like brainwash it was reason-based brainwashing. It wasn't delusional, but it was like, I have to take my confidence level and level it up. And then I need to, like, catch my breath, and I need to take my confidence level and level it up again. And then I have to go and ask myself a bunch of questions and make sure that the math that I was doing was not off, because I'm going to have to level up my confidence again. So I'm going to go and double check and triple check and quadruple check all of my math and the storytelling. And then I'm going to double up my confidence again. And then with a huge amount of, like, body shaking, fear and panic, I'm going to go for it. And every day multiple times a day, I have paralyzing anxiety and need to step out of meetings and do meditative breathing for a few minutes because it is so scary. But then I go and do the breathing, catch a deep breath. Exercise is important for me. So I'll go for a run, or I'll go and I'll lift weights, or I'll rock climb. And then with continued anxiety through my entire body, I will go back and, like, does the story still make sense? Is there a pathway to this all working? Yes. And then with innate embedded fear and panic throughout my entire body, I go back and I keep doing it.
Thank you so much. That answer is going to stay with me for a very long time. Thank you.
Good. I hope it's useful.
Thank you, Michael.
Great. Looks like one more.
Yes, we can go for the last one. Please go ahead, Salma. Salma, are you there?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yes. Hi, Michael. It's wonderful to hear that you have lived through what I'm going through right now. I'm a tech startup founder who's trying to build a healthcare app for renal and cancer patients. basically a patient care management app. And having gone through your profile, I was more eager to get more input from you on the healthcare sector. Like, for example, we've just moved from B2C to B2B and B2C. So
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, how am I going to approach the hospitals? How they're going to, I mean, like, initially we were only building for B2C, but
Mm-hmm.
since we are going for funding and stuff like that, we felt that, we could get a more wider exposure to our app if we went B2B as well. So I would really love to hear how you did it with Colombia Asia, and what kind of advice would you give me to go ahead with?
Absolutely. So this is a space that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. And of course, I don't have full context on what you're building, but I think I have a general idea. Um, my sister works in this space. My sister's passion, she went and did an MBA in healthcare management, and she's passionate about better patient care and better healthcare provider care. So how making life easier for healthcare providers, and in doing so, helping make their life more organized, less stressful, and in doing so, helping make lives better for patient care and better patient outcomes. And we've spent lots of time discussing this. The first thing that I'll say is be glad that you're not in the United States. I would never build a healthcare company in the United States because it is such a messy and biased environment of incentives that make it an unfair place to try to do anything, because even if you have a solution that's fundamentally better, there are forces and systems at play that will ensure it never works. So if you're going to go and do something like this, I think India and parts of the world like India are the right place to do it, because there's still lots of bureaucracy and still lots of issues. But there's actually more like free market ability to iterate and try and flex things than there is in places like the US and parts of Europe. So if I was going to go and work on digital infrastructure for better patient care, I'd be doing it in India. B2B and B2C investors, if you're going to go and try to raise money, and it's not, you're in a space where I'd say, yeah, from what I've heard, you can go and have a run at raising venture capital. You're digital based, which has the potential to scale. You have the pathway to B2C and B2B customers in a large space. So like you have the ability to put together a story that can end with you being a 500, 800,000 crore business. Uh, Right now, then, you have to be scrappy and cunning and conniving and thoughtful about how you create something out of nothing. And investors always like B2B because they think it's easier and bigger chunks of revenue from larger companies than the hard, painful work of convincing one customer at a time. And so, very, very simply right now, because we do B2B and B2C, but I knew that we had to do both of them. B2C, like I think about this because I try to be like a cunning like rat that weaves, like there's one of my most thoughtful, there's a book that is probably hard to find in India, but On Grand Strategy is written by a Yale professor and studies the greatest thinkers and the greatest strategists throughout history. It's written by the professor of one of Yale's most famous classes. It's called On Grand Strategy, but I can't remember the professor's name, but I can look it up. And he analyzes Abraham Lincoln as a strategist. And Abraham Lincoln, he said one of the best strategists of all time. And people know Abraham Lincoln as being very moral and ethical and pushing to reduce to solve the segregation of the U.S. and being a great orator. But he said no, he was all those good things, but really he was probably one of the best strategists of all time. And he makes a metaphor for Abraham Lincoln is that Lincoln was very, very good at picking the point in the distance that he was going to. He was picking the hill in the distance. And if you tried to just go to that point in the distance, the hilltop on the far side of the valley, and not change your compass heading, you just like followed Google Maps straight line, you're going to hit all of these canyons and rivers and swamps and ditches. If we think about trying to do this in Delhi, if you just try to follow the straight line through Delhi, like you're going to fall through the sidewalk. There's a massive hole, and you're not get through some locked off residence development. What Abraham Lincoln was very good was having that spot on the horizon and then bobbing and weaving and like making sure that He got around the ditches and around the apartment block and then through the freeway, but making sure that he was always back to that same location. So what I'm bringing this to is that you have to bob and weave, like convincing a hospital to do something. If you want to go and talk to Apollo and try to convince Apollo to implement your product, it'd be super, super hard. Apollo is getting hit hourly by people trying to pitch them and sell them stuff. Slow moving, long and painful process. If you want to go and convince one patient at a primary health clinic to try something, you can do it. In India, you convince most consumers to try something if you do it for free or do it for very little. And so what I would think about here is get some consumers using your product. When you've got enough consumers using your product, you go and you find an unappealing, not very well branded, low profile diagnostic center, and you convince them to try out something for free. Now you are B2B, and it probably was for free. Like you had to give them something to try out, and you're like, I've got 30 patients of yours that come here regularly already are using it because you stood outside their door and you got patients using it. And then you say, so 30 patients that you've seen in the last 2 weeks are using it. You should try using the other side of our platform. And they're like, oh, 30 patients. Yeah, we will. So now you are B2C and B2B with a no-name diagnostics clinic. Dr. Shadab's father runs a great but small profile, not big branded diagnostics business in Delhi. A business like that, 3 or 4 diagnostic centers, you say, try this out. Now you have a foundation, a story to go to somebody slightly larger and more substantial. Or maybe the next thing you're like, once that diagnostics center is using it, then you get 400 of their customers using it. So you went from 30 customers only to the diagnostics clinic because you said, look, I already got a large portion of your customers. Then you get 300 or 400 more of the customers. So now you have 400 customers in a diagnostics clinics and you're in 2 locations. That's when you can then go and say to a larger 12 or 14 location diagnostics business, or 4 primary healthcare locations and 4 diagnostics outposts and say, look, we were already doing this for somebody quite similar. Do you want to try it out? Or if you have to, you do the same thing you do the first one. You go and stand out front of that location and you get 100 of their customers. And then you go in the door a month later and say, we already have 100 of your customers and we already are dual-sided platform, patients and healthcare provider at this other network. And this is what they say about it. It's helped improve patient outcomes, and it's helped us reduce the number of doctors we need on staff every week by 20%. So we're saving money. Wouldn't you want to try it? And you do that, this leapfrog of step on this stone, jump across to the slightly bigger stone, create something out of nothing, speak to another 500 patients in front of another outpatient network, and you create, if you can do that and survive long enough with your funding, you can over a year suddenly find yourself going and talking to Apollo's little cousin like Manipal and saying, look, yeah, I know we don't serve anybody as large as you do, but we actually serve 7 different small healthcare businesses and have 3,000 patients in Srinagar or in Mysore. Like you go places where the taking's easier because you go to a 12 location primary health service in Srinagar and nobody's chasing them the way that somebody's chasing Apollo in Bangalore, or Apollo in Delhi. And when you've done that, then you show up in Delhi and you go to Apollo or you go to Manipal and you say, well, Srinagar, Mysore, and Hyderabad, we have 6 B2B customers and 4,000 customers on the platform. So like they're all benefiting from it. And you can call in and talk to this person and this procurement person and this head of healthcare outcomes at this network, and they'll tell you that it's pretty transformative. That's how you crawl and scrape and create out of nothing something that allows you to then go in and have the bigger conversation with a Apollo or a Manipal or somebody like that. And how you can go and raise money from VCs and say, look, yeah, we don't have a Manipal or an Apollo yet, but we have all of these other ones. Give us a bunch of money to build this new functionality into a product so that we can go and pitch to Apollo successfully.
Yes. Thank you so much, Michael. That was really eye-opening and enlightening, actually. It was really having, I mean, your journey has been a great lesson for all of us.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take that as an opportunity to kind of give a last bit of kind of advice or a perspective that I have as somebody who works a lot in India. And I think this is an important part. I think, and I'll bring in at risk of being a little exposing a lot of kind of my thoughts around the world and yeah, taking a risk is I come from a demographic and an ethnicity and a gender that usually is known for not lacking in confidence and not lacking for entitlement. I'd say people like I know a lot of Indian uncles who have a similar level of entitlement and confidence that I have. Not supposed to drive down that road. That's fine. I drive where I want. Yeah, no, it's a one-way road down a payroll. Yeah, a toll. Yeah, I'll go there. It doesn't matter. It's fine. Who's to stop me? That comes with a lot of problems, and that comes with a lot of challenges. But when it comes, and we can talk about the social implications and what it means for family relationships and a lot of things. But when it comes to building a business, and trying to create something in the world different than what exists today, the more you can thoughtfully channel your entitled, overly confident, arrogant uncle. And do it thoughtfully. It's Machiavellian. It's saying, no, I'm not going to be, excuse the word, I'm not going to be an asshole all the time. But when somebody tells me no 5 times in a row, I'm not going to say, TK, I'm going to go home and not ask them again. You're going to say, well, I'm going to ask a 6th time. I'm going to ask a 7th time. Like that level of confidence is unbelievably important. And it's something that I know from speaking to my sisters and to female founders and friends that I work with, that sometimes it's a little bit harder for female founders and female entrepreneurs to have the arrogance and the ego that is often easier for privileged, entitled, and just more testosterone-filled men. But if you can figure out how to do that, and I'm going to give you an example of what this looks like, and you have to do it thoughtfully and humbly and politely. I think that's the important thing to try to figure out how to do these audacious things, is that if you can think about things in a physics basis, not what people say you can and cannot do, but what is physically possible in the world. And you say that that's your baseline, that's your benchmark for what is possible. And then anything on top of that is just people's bias or the wrong bit of bureaucracy. You only let the things that physics dictate determine what you do. And so what does that look like? Like I'll talk to a supplier and the supplier will say, well, we can't have that part to you for 2 months. It's like, well, what does that part look like? It's one piece of steel and one piece of plastic. And you have both of those things in your building right now. You just have to screw them together. And then your location is 600 kilometers from my location. And so assuming you drive 60 kilometers an hour on average, that in 10 hours, you can take that thing and you can move it from your location to my location. So you're saying 6 or 8 months, but I know that it's 10 minutes for you to bolt those two things together. And I know that it's 10 hours for you to get it from there to where I am. So you can say 8 or 9 months, but I know that it's actually a sub 24-hour action that needs to happen. Like, no, we have this reason, and so-and-so is traveling and we don't have this part and this machine's not working and we don't have a driver. And I say, cool, but I know it's not 8 months. I know that it's 24 hours. And last week we had a supplier telling us that they needed 2 to 3 months to finish a motorcycle frame for us. We needed 500 motorcycle frames from them. It would be 3 or 4 months. And I said, no, I don't think it's 3 or 4 months. I don't think it's 5 months. I think it's 2 weeks. And I walked them through from a physics perspective, time and material and work to do it, what it would look like. No, it's not going to take time. No, we have too many other things happening. No, we have to do this, we have to do that. Back and forth 8, 9, 10 times. I eventually was with my team, 16 of us, in their facility, building frames on their equipment. I kept not taking their excuses. I showed up. They wouldn't let our employees in. Like, no, this is our production facility in Pune. We can't. Then we sent a director of our company. No, we can't let you in. Sorry, we'll deliver the material in 2 months. Then the CEO showed up, and the CEO showed up, the overconfident, big mustached, cowboy boot wearing Gora CEO showed up at night when I knew that the security guard was going to be not as as intense as the day security guard. And when they came back the next morning, 16 Zeno employees, led by the CEO, were building frames on their shop floor. And 2 weeks later, we had produced all 500 frames. So there was arrogance, but then when the CEO of that supplier showed up in the morning, thank you so much, sir. So sorry that we had to do this, sir, but your team was very polite. They let me in. I was the one being rude to them, but thank you so much. Thank you so much. Shukriya, shukriya, shukriya. We're here to help you. And so I went from being arrogant and assertive and saying, I'm going to invade your facility, to thank you so much, and can I buy you lunch, and we'll make sure that we take care of your staff, and we'll give you a bonus. And 2 weeks later, we'd produced all of those frames, we'd put them in a truck, we'd left, and we'd gotten done what we needed to get done. And it was humility and politeness and charm and confidence and ego and arrogance and asserting myself and injecting myself, inserting myself into some place that they kept telling me I wasn't supposed to be. And we got the thing done. Take that as a lesson in, just because somebody says, no, you can't speak to so-and-so, or just because somebody says, no, you can't talk to our patients because we have, stand on the street, watch who comes out of that building, say, sorry to bother you, but would you be interested in trying out? How was your experience in that clinic? Would you be interested in trying out a product that might make your healthcare journey better? It's free to try. They download the app. Now the person who's told you at the front desk, no, nobody can try this out. You've spoken to someone in the street. They've said, sure, I'll try it out. They downloaded the app. You have a customer. Channel that energy with humility and politeness and charm, but don't take no for an answer when you need to try something, and break things down into the basic physics. If somebody says it'll take you this long or that it's not possible, ask yourself, do the laws of physics and gravity make that impossible? And if not, keep trying, knock on the other door down the hallway, go around to the back door of the building, talk to somebody else, talk to the customer outside the front door. And I think this is particularly important, as I'll close on this, most of our investors think that what we are doing makes no sense. Most of our investors think that it will not work at scale. They don't think that with $1 billion, this will work. But our investors have watched how I think and how I operate, and they have said, and these are the same investors who have invested in the founders of Uber and Facebook and Instagram, founders who've invested in Rapido. They said, your tenacity and your ability to be so arrogant and overconfident and insert yourself into places where you shouldn't be, but to do it with charm and humility and politeness, have us scared about what happens to the world when you are out trying to get something done that you have decided is important to get done. And for that reason, we will back you till the end. And it's just that gives investors saying, look, this is all hard. This doesn't make sense, but we are scared by you. And what I don't tell them is I'm having an anxiety attack and a panic attack before I'm in that meeting. I'm scared of the whole situation. They're scared of what happens to the world if they don't back me. And with that confidence, that overcoming of fear and anxiety and panic, and that bravery of saying, I have no idea if this is going to work, but I know what needs to be true, and I know what physics dictates here. That is how I then go and approach problems. And if you channel a little bit of that with humility and with confidence, humility meets confidence, arrogance meets charm, assertiveness meets thoughtfulness, and you don't give up, then a lot of amazing things can happen. And I'll finish up there, because I know we're 30 minutes over.
Yes. Thank you so much, Michael. It has truly been a delight having you here, and you have walked us through not just the journey of Zeno, but you have left such valuable insights and lessons for all of our participants here, for the audience here, and you have closed with such a big punch. I hope they take this and take away inspiration and motivation from this while they're building their businesses. And they're great important lessons. Before we close, I would like to take a memorable capture. So I would like to request all of our audience to please go ahead and switch on your cameras and show your hearts. And I'll be taking a screen capture in 3, 2, 1. Another one in 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you so much, Ruha and Caitlin, for also joining us. We would love to have you again here. And also for giving us the extra time.
Thank you very much, everyone. It was an honor. Good luck with all of your endeavors, and hopefully get to check in on you all again soon.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for all of you for joining us, for being such a great audience. We look forward to keep building and keep hustling, keep soaring high. Have a good night, everyone.
Khuda Hafiz.